For our first guest, however, we have a journalist, the world's first British-Bangladeshi foreign correspondent for an international news channel, I believe. And she has also co-authored 2 books, whilst also, in her journey as a journalist, has also covered some of the world's biggest stories, like the Rohingya crisis and the Bangladeshi elections, and also the Syria war. So very serious topics. She's been living in Istanbul for the last 6 years, and has done a lot as a British-Bangladeshi woman within our community. But before we chat to her, let's go away and look at a clip.
It's known as Muaskar Talaya, and just about 5 days ago, a Turkish airstrike ended all activities here.
The military offensive is very much ongoing. The front line is about 200 meters.
This truck was on its way to deliver aid, but it's been stuck here for the past 40 minutes because of the thick mud caused by monsoon rain. Cost of living is so high. They're angry at President Macron and they want him to resign.
Were you ever a member of Daesh?
No.
Were you ever tempted?
No.
Were you ever approached?
I think they had a lot of methods to recruit people through the media, even within the Northern Territory, but...
Were you ever personally approached by Daesh while you were in Syria?
No.
The Russian Ministry of Defense says it has lost contact with a military aircraft.
The YPG caused destruction throughout this entire town. They would base themselves in some of these houses, and when they wanted to move from house to house, rather than use the main road, they would break the walls, just like the one I've just been through, so that they would be able to pass undetected by drones.
Give us an idea of what other reports are coming up through the week.
Well, we're going to be looking at rural enterprises run by women making money all across the countryside. We're going to be looking at the pharmaceutical industry, which is doing very, very well, exporting to more than 140 countries.
We've been here just 15 minutes and at least 200 Rohingya refugees have passed us. We're being told that at least 2,000 will be crossing this point this evening.
Welcome back to TRT World, a reminder of our top stories. We need to bear in mind that 80% of COVID-19 cases have been mild, and the death rate is just 2.3%. So just how difficult is Indian dance? Let's find out.
I absolutely loved that dance right at the end. You can see that Shamim's career has been extensive and complex. Hello, how are you?
Hi,
thank you so much for joining us.
I'm very well, thank you. Thanks you. I don't know if you noticed, but there was a slight wobble when I was doing that dancing. Yeah, but I didn't think that doing many more takes would improve it. So
how many did you have to do?
Not that many, actually. I can't remember because it was quite some time ago. But we didn't. I don't think we did that many takes, but I kind of knew my limit. I knew that this was as good as it gets.
Well, it was amazing. I loved it.
While you're ahead was my...
I can't dance to save my life,
No,
so that to me was amazing. So well done. So let's talk a bit about you. Obviously, you are the first British-Bangladeshi foreign correspondent, and I think that's amazing. You're a role model for so many of us out there. So is journalism something that you've always been interested in?
Yes, I think I was interested in it before I even realised I was interested in it, if that makes sense.
So as a young child?
I mean, as a young child, I was very interested in news and current affairs. I grew up in a very kind of political family. My father was very much interested in, the news and current affairs, and that kind of seeped into our kind of family life. So I grew up with all of that, and I loved English. I loved to read. I loved to write. And so it was basically, as I grew older, it was kind of a culmination of all of those things that I was interested in, kind of, all translated to journalism.
This was, something that you had as a vision. This is something that I want to do. So you prepared for that as you grew up. Was it a difficult journey?
It was a difficult journey. I think the penny really dropped on me when I was 22 years old. That is when I knew for certain that I wanted to go into journlism. So after I graduated, I did a science degree.
Fine.
I was kind of like wandering around a bit lost for a couple of years or so, and I was in the US. My father's suggestion. I went to the US where I have relatives, and I started working for an NGO affiliated with the UN, and a lot of that involved writing and researching, and that's when I became I was introduced to world affairs and diplomacy and international relations, and I fell in love with it straight away. But when I came back, it was a challenge for a number of reasons. One being that I didn't really have any experience in, I wasn't involved in my university newspaper, or, I didn't really have any kind of journalistic experience. So I took a safe job with the Home Office, civil service, immigration officer. I was an immigration officer for 5 years.
Okay, very different things,
and carrying out asylum interviews. And during that time, I had to get some further. I did a master's degree, and
so while you were scanning those passports, was there any point where you felt doubt that you wouldn't be able to achieve this dream that you're now living?
It wasn't that I didn't feel that I wasn't going to achieve it, but there was no doubt in my mind that that is what I wanted to do. I didn't know what the end goal would be, but at no stage did I change my mind, no.
So once you became a journalist, what are some of, would you say, your top 2 stories that you've covered?
I'm
putting you on the spot there.
I mean, it depends, but certainly one of the stories, I don't know about top 2, but the one story that really was very personal to me, and I consider it one of the highlights of my career, was I did a special series on the Bangladesh economy.
Fine.
And it was a week-long series, which it was my brainchild. I executed it myself. I set up the interviews myself. Myself and a cameraman. We didn't have a producer. We had a local fixer. We spent 11 days in Bangladesh, travelling around. Actually, the Bangladeshi embassy in Istanbul, in Ankara, were very helpful. They gave us exclusive access to some industries that no journalists, like we were allowed into the pharmaceutical, one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in Bangladesh, which does not allow the media in. So that really gave me a real sense of satisfaction. The reason being is because it's just not something you hear about. You don't think of Bangladesh exporting 140 pharmaceuticals to 140 different countries in the world. You don't think about how empowered Bangladeshi women are and how they are propping up the economy. And you don't think about how Bangladesh's artisan industry is thriving and has been around and is unique and is patented and has been around for decades. People just don't know about these things. And I really felt like I had this obligation almost, like it was a calling, to
highlight those issues.
To show the world that, this is one of the world's largest economies and you need to know about it. So that really was up there, I'd say.
You are doing, that sounds absolutely amazing. Thank you for doing that work and making sure that our community is seen by the world, because we do a lot. And you even explained that Bangladeshi women in particular, they're not seen by the world. And you yourself being a successful British Bangladeshi woman, what would you say that experience is like now being known by people? Have you faced any prejudice from your own community? Have you faced any microaggressions, any racism from in your line of work? How was it? Just explain that to me.
Well, I think you're looking at 2 kind of scenarios here, potential scenarios. You're looking at the community itself and the challenges that come from within that community. And let's not beat around the bush here. It is a patriarchal, Bangladeshi society is a traditional society, and it is, by and large, I'm not saying exclusively, it is, even to this day, weighted against women. And then you're contending with that, but then you're also having to contend with the external environment and racism and prejudice, which we know, exists. In my case, I was very fortunate. I don't think I would have been able to achieve anything like I have done without the support of my family, at least in my professional life. I had, when I decided to move to Istanbul as a single woman, back in 2015, I had the full support of my mother, my brothers, my sister-in-law, my nieces and nephews, and also my extended family, my uncles, my chachas, paternal uncles, as we say in Bengalis, my fufus, paternal aunts, as we say, and my cousins, and they have been unfailingly supportive. And I think without that, I don't think I would have had the mental capacity to kind of go it alone, because I knew they always had my back. That is not to say I have not been made aware
Yeah.
of the difficulties
Of
that many
course.
women in my situation from a similar background face, and you know, it breaks my heart. It breaks my,
course.
because they're being held back.
Of
You know,
course,
they're being
and-
held back from achieving their full potential, from realizing their dreams, and from you know, leading the
Yeah.
path that destiny has set out
Exactly.
for them. And I think it's really quite tragic. Just moving on to the external thing. So I would say
Oh,
that you
yes.
know, for people of British-Bangladeshi background, I would say, you know, support your children, trust your children, you know, support your daughters.
Yeah,
You know, it doesn't
of course,
necessarily
support
mean
them
that they're going
regardless of
to,
gender.
you know, do anything. You know, you don't have to fear about, you know, what it is that they may get up to. But I think this is, you know, this is really quite crucial. In terms of the external environment, we know racism exists. I've been on the receiving end of
Yeah.
racism. When I was a kid, my mum, you know, she tells me the story. She went out, and I was walking alongside her. My brother was in his pushchair, and she got racist abuse, and people threw eggs
my
at her. This is
gosh.
a woman with young children.
Wow.
And this is just one anecdotal incident. For me, it was normal to be called racist names. You know, when I was at primary school, you know, Paki. This is what I was called, you know. I mean, you can't really articulate the impact that that has on a young child, what it does for their the way they see themselves, and you know, for their kind of, you know, personal, intellectual and emotional growth. So, you know, I don't think there's a single person of colour out there who hasn't experienced,
Of
you know,
course,
racism.
you know, it's
and we know
everywhere.
it exists today, and we know it's multifaceted, and we know it's multi-layered.
Of
You know,
course.
it works in subtler ways in the workplace. It's happened to me. I had
know.
when I was working for a news channel some years back, some guy walked past, took one look at me and said, "Shouldn't you be working in a building society?" Now, I think, you know, and I think, you know, okay, it was meant as a joke, but clearly what he was saying is, you don't belong in this newsroom. You know, I see you as something else.
That's awful. I'm so sorry you had to experience that.
Well, you know, you kind of, you know, you have to process it in a way that it makes you more determined, it makes you more resilient.
Of course. And I think it sends a great message that, you know, the challenges will be there. Without a doubt, for anybody, you know, wanting to follow in your footsteps, the challenges will be there. But the example that your story sets is that you can overcome them, and you can, you know, even though it hurts, even though it will cause a memory of pain, you can still get where you know, want to be. And I think, you know, when you spoke
it is, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we have to accept those challenges.
Of course
you know,
not.
we need
No, of course not.
to face them. We need to confront those challenges,
and they need to stop, of course. But you know, we don't support those challenges, but even though they are there, it's not impossible to achieve your goal. We can obviously, with time, try and fight those together as a unit. Unfortunately, we don't have long left, but I wanted to ask you one final question. I know that you are a co-author of 2 books, and could you tell me more about that process? You're not only a journalist, you're also an author.
Well, you know, I mean, yes, the technical term is co-author, but I wrote a chapter in each of them. In the first one, there were 10 of us wrote a chapter each about our experiences reporting refugees, and in my case, it was the Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh. And in the second one, I think there were 6 of us, and it was my account of reporting the Syrian war, which I kind of covered quite extensively over the course of, you know, a number of years or so. So it's really, you know, I wrote it in a kind of a very personal kind of like, you know, kind of personal non-fiction narrative style, so that, you know, people would be able to get a kind of sense of you know.
Whilst you're, you know, reporting these very serious events with a lot of hardship, how do you feel? What's that experience like being there in person?
I think you have to remain very focused. You know, you're kind of, on the one hand, you're kind of thinking, well, you know, I've got to get this report in by, you know, whatever time today, or, you know, by, so you're kind of, in a way, you're kind of very, you know, you're very kind of fixated on things that you need to get done, and, you know, I need to get this interview and this shot and that shot and all of that. But on the other hand, you know, you're trying to absorb the magnitude, the sheer magnitude of what is happening around you, which is quite surreal.
Yeah.
And often that second part of the thought process comes later. It's only when you go back to your, you know, back to Istanbul or back to London, and then you're just thinking, my goodness, you know, I've just, you know, this is where I've just been, and did that really happen? So it is.
Have you ever made connections with people there?
Connections
in terms of, you know, spoken to the people who were native to that area?
Of course. I mean, that is fundamental to our work. You know, you have to engage with people. We need people local people, often we need them to facilitate things for us. We need to forge not just professional relationships, but personal relationships with them if we want to really get to the heart of,
and so
what
was
the
it like an
story
emotional
is.
roller coaster then to see these people suffering firsthand?
I mean, it is very difficult. I mean, I think you'd have to be, inhumane not to be impacted to some degree or other by
of course. So the people out there, young British Bangladeshis who want to go into journalism, who might want to follow and go to these places just like you have. Obviously, you can give any advice that you like, but I can see that it's hard to maintain a kind of emotion work balance type thing. So what kind of advice would you give to people wanting to follow in your
I would say
footsteps?
go for it. I mean, I have I am a human being at the end of the day, and all the negative emotions that anybody experiences, I have experienced, and if I'm honest with you, I still do from time to time. Imposter syndrome, am I good enough, am I worthy of this position, I feeling scared, feeling nervous, all of this is real. There's nothing wrong with it. It makes you a normal person, but go for it anyway. What's the worst thing that can happen? The worst thing that can happen is that you don't get it, you learn from your mistakes, you try again.
Yep.
So this you never believe that you can't do anything. Just really give it your best shot and just go for it.
And just one more thing, because I really wanted to ask about this. You're also a judge at the Asian Media Awards. That is so exciting. How does that feel? What's that experience like?
It's fantastic. And the Asian Media Awards is obviously, we don't just assess British Bangladeshis, but it's the entire South Asian community in the UK. So Pakistanis, Indians, Sri Lankans, and it's, and every single year I'm just amazed at the talent and the quality of journalism that we see coming up time and time again. I judge 2 categories and I've been doing it from the very beginning.
Yeah.
And I think to myself, okay, I'm just not going to be surprised anymore. I've seen it all. I've seen the best of the best.
Yeah.
And then the next year comes along and I just think,
wow,
this is just incredible. So it's a fantastic event and it's something I'm really, really proud of. And it just makes me very, very proud of, my community and all that we're achieving and, my background. But, do more.
Do everything.
Go out
you
there
can.
and let's
Yes.
shout from the rooftop, shout from the top of our voices.
Yes, definitely a message that we've had with our conversation here today. I want to thank you for coming. It's been an absolute privilege. I wish I could talk. Genuinely, I wish I could talk. I say this every time, but I mean it.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's been my pleasure.
But do return when you can. It's been amazing. And also, well done and congratulations for everything that you've achieved, and I hope you go on to achieve even more.
Thank you. That's very
in
kind
the
of you to say
future.
so.
Well, that for you, everybody, was Miss Sharmeen Chaudhry. It was amazing to speak to her. She is now one of my biggest role models, having heard everything that she's done, all the hard work that she's put in to be where she is. I think we can all take a message from that despite any barriers that we might be facing, we can achieve what we like. So if you are dreaming to do something, chase it. Do whatever you can to achieve that, because you can do it.